And we're live. Welcome back to Survivor Global on Reality Pop. I'm your host, Chris, and we're going to be talking about Australian Survivor episodes 20 and 21 for Champions versus Contenders 2. And like you can see, I've got a special guest here with me today, a previous player of Survivor South Africa Season 7, Jacques Burger. Jacques, how are you doing today?
Hi, Chris. I'm very good, man. I'm very good. It's early your time, but it's late my time. I've got my notes. I've got a beer, so I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
I'm super excited to have you do one of these recaps with me. I mean, I reached out to you a couple of probably like a month or 2 months ago, and I said,
Yeah.
Jacques, would you mind coming on to do an actual interview for your season, which we're going to be recapping next? And I thought, I'll try my luck and I'll just throw it out there. I know you're a big fan, and I'm just going to ask, do you mind coming on and doing an episode for Australian Survivor as well? And thank you very much for signing up to do it. I know you're a big fan, but really appreciate the fact that you've come on here and that you're willing to talk about a season that is not your own.
Yeah, no problem, Chris. I must just say at the top of this, I'm a fan of Survivor, but when it comes to Survivor Australia, I'm a bit of a casual. I'm not so in tune with it. So if I need to glance at my notes or I don't know the boot order that well, just roll with it. But otherwise, no, man, it's always a pleasure to chat Survivor. It's a great game, and it's I think we're now at a point where it's got an international community. And I think, what you guys are doing great, just, boosting the global awareness of a show. Can't wait to chat about it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And no, definitely. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but your season of Survivor South Africa and also season 6 is now available on Channel 10 in Australia. So there's a whole bunch of new fans over in Australia that are seeing your season probably now for the first time. So we'll try and not spoil anything that's happened on your season. If you want to touch back on some of the things that happened there, then 100%. But if
I'll just say spoiler alert incoming. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that's fine.
We'll try and stay away. We don't want to get the internet people angry at us, and they'll probably find you a lot easier to get angry at you on social than myself. But we'll try and keep them away from you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I just want to say, I think it's on 10 Play, right? That's the channel that it's on in Australia, or something like that. Yeah, I remember the announcement came up that says, it's going to be on Survivor Africa. It's going to be on 10 Play, and I've got a couple of friends who live in Australia, and they said, listen, your thing's on our channel now. People are starting to watch it, and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media. Sorry, I'm just going to close this door. Give me one second. My dogs are going mad. Let them play outside. Sorry, and I remember as it was airing in Australia, I just out of nowhere I got a lot of Twitter mentions and people suddenly following me on Instagram and sending messages. So yeah, I mean definitely I could pick up that there was a bit of a hype or a crowd getting involved. So no, that's always great to
and I think
out this great game.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the different shows, you've got the Survivor US, you've got Australian Survivor, you've got Survivor South Africa, and obviously there's a lot of European countries that also have their own version of Survivor. I think that the most likely one of the three channels to actually do an international versus US type of season or a War of the Worlds type of season, if you may, would probably be Channel 10, because Channel 10 is also owned by CBS, Viacom as well. So they actually bought them out. So so I think that it's a good thing that your seasons are being shown on that side. That just brings the family that much closer together. So we love to see it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And sorry, go ahead. No, that's good, Chris. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, so going into the Australian seasons, you mentioned you're quite a casual. Have you watched all of the seasons, or was this maybe the one that you sort of watched since you sort of played? I think your season was around 2019 as well, and this was the 2019 season?
Yeah. So I watched it. I think we'll watch it when I came back. We came back. Yeah, we shot early in 2019, so we shot Feb to March. So I think I came back and I caught up some of it and watched it. Yeah, I didn't think I watched it in real time. I watched it a bit afterwards. But I've seen all the Australians, I think, and one of the New Zealand ones. But like I said, I mean, it's been a while ago, and the Australian episodes are a bit longer, so and there's 24 episodes. But usually it's 13, 14. So my memory is not that great when it comes to these things. But no, I have watched most of them, and then obviously the The one that came after this 2019 one was the one that aired last year, which was All Stars, with the finale, which was just when the COVID thing broke out, if I'm not mistaken. I think if you take the Australian Survivor in a whole, I think it's almost like this. Got a couple of seasons and then just like great cast for All Stars, and then I think it's like they tied the bow on it. So I think it's like now it's from the way I experienced it that like chapter 1 of Australian Survivor is now, let's say, done and dusted, and from 21 onwards it's like we're doing chapter 2. That's the way I envision it. Coming full circle. I will touch on it with what happened in Champions versus Contenders 2. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it is exciting times because we do have a new season, obviously, for Survivor South Africa coming out this year in June, but we also have a new season for Australian Survivor coming out probably close to that time, maybe 2 months after the Survivor South Africa season. And I did see that they're now putting a casting call out for the season after that for Australian Survivor. So we're definitely getting 2 more seasons of Australian Survivor, which is really positive.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I think the American one announced they've went back to Fiji to start shooting 41. I don't know if they have started shooting but it's a great time to be a fan.
Yeah, I think they're in quarantine right now. At least I know that the production team is in quarantine, definitely as of now. So it's really exciting. They're going to do 41 and 42 back to back, and I think they're already casting for 43 as well by the sounds of it. So really positive on that front. Great. Now, going into this season and sort of looking at these 2 episodes, we start off here with Daisy being on Exile Beach. They don't call it the island because it's more like a beach that they're on over in Australia. And we see her suffering a little bit out there on her own, saying that she's struggled to stay in the game. And mentally, I feel like it can be quite tough. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on sort of with the Exile Beach, you did also go to, I believe, the Island of Secrets on your own in one of those cases. What was it like being sort of secluded, and can you sort of relate to what Daisy is going through here and how tough it must be sort of to be out there on her own?
Yeah, look, I think the one big difference, you're right, Chris. I was on the Island of Secrets where it was, in our case, say 24-hour, with one night stint on your own. I think the big difference was, for me, it was an escape from the game, because I was there with like, okay, might get an advantage. What's happening here? We had what they call in Samoa a fale, which is like a small structure with a straw hut, and access to flint and some rice. So for me, it was essentially a break from the game. To essentially like recharge your batteries and get into a bit of a different headspace. I went snorkeling out a bit and just to see that. The Samoan wildlife. For Daisy, on the other hand, I think she's in a very different space. She's like, well, I've just been kicked out of my tribe. I'm out of a game, and I've got one shot to come back in, and we'll touch on that with Simon. But if you're there and you've got one shot to get back in, you're facing the same people who voted you back out. So it's a very difficult, come back in and stay in the game. So I think she's in a much, it's a greater state of despair that she was in. I think, like I said, I was in a state of, this is a great break from game to get my head clear, where she was in a state of, I need to now, panic and think of how do I come up with a strategy when I get back in the game, if I get back in the game. And I think that those 2 comparisons are quite different.
Yeah, and she did spend a bit of time there. I feel like it might have been about 2 or 3 days before Simon, at least 2 days before Simon got there, because she talks about the fact that the first 38 days was really easy compared to being there on day 40. So it must have been 2 days before Simon got there. And I remember in the previous episode, we saw her struggling with a flint, trying to get fire going. You quite rightfully said that there wasn't as probably the shelter there didn't look as good as the shelter or the bungalow type of shelter that you had on the Island of Secrets. And the big thing here for her is, she sees Simon being the next person voted out, and he's a previous, professional athlete coming there. Exactly. So doesn't make her feel much better being out there and her chances of getting back in the game.
No, not at all. And I think that's also the thing when you sit there, you theorycraft, if I put myself in Daisy's shoes, who's going to come back? And you have to imagine, if Luke loses, he's going to be the one coming out. Otherwise, it will be somebody like Simon. And if you look at, the last 6. I think we are at the final 6. It's a pretty stacked deck. There's no even a guy like Baden. I mean, he won a couple of individual immunity challenges. He's good at puzzles. You know what the challenge can be. So I think if you're Daisy, you're like, listen, the odds are totally stacked against me, and I think that just adds to the sheer darkness and despair that she's facing at that point in time in the game. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, she lost her biggest two allies in Sean and John, who played the game with her throughout the whole game, and she's kind of like the last person standing off that alliance, the last remnant of that alliance. So not very positive. Now, what is your overall sort of view on these types of twists where you get people going out of the game and then they come back? Like you've got Exile Beach in this case, you've got the Edge of Extinction that's becoming quite popular in the US with producers, I should say. Not necessarily with all the fans, but what's your opinion about that?
No, look, I think that's a good question, Chris, and I think it's something that, as a player, obviously, they want to keep you, on your toes with, challenges, twists, and what's coming. If it's a predictable game, and it wouldn't be fun to watch. That being said, I've never been a fan, and the American version doesn't do it often. South Africa has once or twice, and Australia as well, where they're surprise, tonight's vote, you're not voting somebody out, you're sending him to Exile Island. And for me, it's always a bit of a I want to say like a wasted opportunity for a twist, because whoever gets voted out, unless there's like a drastic tribe swap or something, you're just going to vote them out again. So I feel like as a viewer, it's like a wasted episode, so to speak. And as a player, look, I don't have an issue with the lower bracket as such. I think Edge of Extinction with a couple of twists can be implemented a bit better. But I think like Redemption Island, and there's like the kind of a duel coming back in. And if up front, like day one, you walk in, whoever host this, JLP or Nico Panagio or Jeff Brabs says, okay, guys, we're doing, immunity duel for immunity after every challenge, okay, there's somebody coming back at let's say at the swap and at the merge and at the final 7, whatever. I think then it's fine as a player, knowing when it's going to happen. But when it's just like out of left field, it's for me it doesn't really. Like the show loses momentum for those couple of episodes. That's the way I interpret it, at least.
Yeah, and it also leaves it open for potential there if production wanted to, sort of mingle a little bit with the format of the game, and they wanted to keep a certain favorite player of production in the show a little bit longer. They could potentially move that to an elimination that makes sense for them in that scenario to keep someone in the game. So I agree with you. A little bit more transparency and sort of knowing when that's going to come into play definitely will help with the strategizing. And the Australian version definitely is very guilty of not telling their players in advance when there's going to be non-elimination days in the show. And we've seen it especially now in this one. I mean, they told them in the beginning of the Tribal Council, so that's better than some of the earlier seasons where I believe Nick Adanzia, who you played the mini sequester with, and I think Dirty Harry, who's part of the season, was in that one as well.
Also there, both of them,
So Nick Adanzia was the first person to benefit from that twist. So he was voted out in his first season, and there was no warning given that it was going to be a non-elimination until he was voted out. And then they said, actually, psych, he's not voted out, he's going to the other tribe.
And see, it's when, like you say, when that psych moment happens, when all the people, they put on the tinfoil hats and they're like, no, production got this list. If that guy comes up, they're going to flip it. Otherwise, no, it's a vote out. So, and I think Survivor's always been good with the sense that, I mean, if you've been there and you've been on the set in that location, I mean, they don't put a tribe swap in because they think, one of our favorites, or you've got the back against the wall. When there's a tribe swap, there's a location and there's new buffs and everything's ready. So obviously they planned it out in advance. I'll never say that Survivor tries to interfere with the game. I know some people do have a theory. I tend to think not 99% of the time. But that being said, whenever it happens, everybody can just say, oh, but wait a minute, they wouldn't have done that if person B or C voted out, but because it was the prime star of the show, or the best narrator. So, I mean, that adds a couple of question marks to a lot of people. And like you rightfully say, I think it breaks a bit of integrity of a show, which prides itself on being a social experiment, which is just, let it happen what happens. But anyway, that's just,
In the case of Australian Survivor, they are contracted to do 24 episodes every season with Channel 10. And due to the fact that they've got to do those many episodes, the sort of non-elimination thing is kind of becoming a normal thing for the Australian format. So at least we know next season it's going to be back again. So it gives players and also fans a little bit of an opportunity to get used to whatever this new format is. And I do like it more than like an Exile Island, where you've got like the whole cast still in the show until the final 6 or something like that. And you've got to focus on that beach and you've got to focus on the main game, which we won't rant on too much because I think you're probably in the same camp as me.
No,
but
I am.
We'll move on to the actual Exile challenge. So we've got Simon and Daisy coming up against each other here in the challenge, and we find out that it is going to be a challenge where they've got to use this long pole with discs on it, and they've got to maneuver it through a bit of an obstacle course. And if they sort of lose their balance, they can knock everything off from the podium at the top as they are putting these discs on top of each other. And it is really a head-to-head battle throughout this whole actual competition. You see both of them wipe out once on like the final 8 discs. They need to get 10 there stacked together, and then ultimately Daisy gets the 10th one on there, but she didn't manage the lean on it that well, and she loses it before the 3-second countdown. Absolutely devastating, but it does mean that Simon is the person here that is going to return to the game, and Simon is angry. You know, he's not in a good place. He's just been blindsided by these people. He goes back into the game and he immediately feels like Rome is burned. You know, he's not going to go back and talk to these people. He's going to go look for an idol immediately.
Yeah. So, Chris, just before we get back to beach, I just want to touch on this challenge. And I just want to say that, I mean, obviously there's a lot of challenges on Survivor, and you mentioned now with the 24 episode format of Australia, and I think it's clear knowledge that Australia has like bigger and more physical challenges. But I think this is one of those challenges where, in my opinion, I think it's a stellar, it's like a top tier challenge because it tests everything, right? You know, it tests your physical ability, you know, it tests your balance, your concentration, and it also tests that kind of like that. This is it. This is me. It's overtime. It's 10 all. I need to kick at post. Can I handle that pressure? Yes or no? You know, as you get progressively. It's something a lot of people excel on the adrenaline part of challenges, and other people excel on the, let's say, the puzzle or whatever. But I think this challenge, it has everything that, you know, taste. It's such a multifaceted challenge that anybody can beat it, but you can't beat it and say, oh, that guy won because he was big or she was strong or whatever. It's a multifaceted, like 3-dimensional puzzle, which I love, a challenge rather. So yeah, I just want to say, I think it's a good challenge, and that's why. And when you have challenges like this with 2 quite capable contestants, like we see in Simon and Daisy, you get this kind of like, you can get this like, you know, breathtaking moments. And so I just want to touch on that. But you're right. You know, Simon comes back and he says, "Listen, all bridges are burned. Let's go look for an idol." Which, I mean, to be quite honest, it's the right move, right? Like we said, you know, you get voted out, they're just going to vote you out in the second round. So you've got 2 options to stay in the game. You know, you can win immunity or you can get immunity idol. Those are your 2 options. And unlike the Age of Extinction, these guys didn't get back into the game with an idol in their pocket. They have to, you know, fend for themselves. So definitely.
100%. And what did you think about the locations that he was digging in? Because he was digging in the middle of the beach, you know, and I was looking at that and I was thinking Jacques would look at that and think to himself, you got to go dig too close to where there's like some sort of landmarks or something. But he was like in the middle of the beach near the camp. Like I felt like it was just chaos. Yeah,
look, I mean, as someone who has dug for idols a couple of times, obviously you got to search for some kind of, I mean, if it's rare, in my opinion, it's rare that they will bury it without like some kind of a clue or some kind of a warning. I mean, if you're just digging in the middle of nowhere, I mean, you know, people lose wedding rings on the beach and the guy's got a what do you call it, a metal detector, and he can't even find the ring, you know. So I mean, digging for search for an idol if you don't have any clue. So yeah, obviously you have to search for some kind of a beacon or underneath a tribe. I mean, when I started digging, when I can't find it, I have to dig. One of the places I started looking was like underneath a tribe flag or underneath a shelter or where the hens' eggs were laid, you know, that like chicken coop thing. So yeah, but I mean, just saying, okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, this spot here, that's a waste of energy, for sure.
Well, I did hear in one of I think it was Luke who said in one of the conversations that Simon was out there searching for 12 hours plus. So
Yeah,
clearly we only saw a few places that he looked. I'm sure
exactly.
he
Yeah,
looked everywhere around the water well and everything.
yeah, and that's just something that maybe it's a very valid point you make, Chris, and that is that when it rains or whatever, and this guy's searching for an idol, you see a 20-second or 15-second clip of something that somebody's doing for 10 hours, So if you have footage for 10 hours of somebody, there's a cameraman just sitting watching you like, and in this tree, in that tree, there for 10 hours. I mean, who's going to want to watch that shit? So no, I
No.
think they just, yeah.
I
feel
think
like
I think that there was no idol there, to be honest with you. I feel like there's no idol currently in the game. That's why he didn't find it, and it is strange to me because at this point in the game, no one actually has an idol on them. So if you're quite used to watching the US shows now, there's a lot more idols in play all the time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they would have planted something, and in the US, I feel like sometimes they make it even quite easy these days. They put it in a tree, so you just walk past it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think, this is like, well, I think 6 people left in the game. So last time you can play one is final 5. And JLP actually asks, the next episode when they Terry Harry does this, I've got an idol. I was just kidding, I don't. He wouldn't ask this question, I think, if production doesn't, have it up their sleeve. So I think they hit it, but I think the Australian guys, they're less lenient on just handing idols out like the American guys, which you rightfully mentioned. So I think it was there, but I think it wasn't an easy find. And I think the long and the short is Simon made the right call. I just think he just didn't got lucky. Dice didn't fall in his favor.
Yeah. Now, we do see a little bit here of the sort of fallout from Abby having betrayed the close girl alliance that she's been in with the whole season. Pretty much it's been Pia, Janine, and Abby. They've been the 3 musketeers sort of dominating the game up until this point. But, we see Pia and Janine bonding on the beach. Pia saying to Janine that, listen, don't be angry. Don't show them that you're angry. We need to still try and ingratiate ourselves back into the group. We've got to go work with some of these people, and we see that Pia does say that she can read on Abby's body language that Abby is done with them and she needs to go in a different direction. And this is all a lot of work that happened in the episode before, which I'm sure you didn't watch every single episode coming back into this one, but so I'll fully on this, and in case you forgot a little bit about it, but Dirty Harry has been working on this narrative for a very, very long time throughout the season to get someone to turn against Janine, because in his mind, Janine has been running the game up until this point. That's why she's been named the godmother. So, he's put enough doubt there in Abby's mind and in Luke's mind in regards to, if you were to go to the end with Janine, she's got the vote. And it finally made Abby realize that, she can't just rely on her physical ability to win challenges only. She needs to take someone out like Janine, who she's been close with, to actually have a bit of a resume to get to the end and actually make a case to win the show here.
Yeah, Chris, I did watch a couple of episodes. Like I chose a couple of them at some point in time, a pilot, merge, whatever. And I did watch 19 as well. So you're very right. It does form this. It's nice when you have a kind of golden thread throughout the season, which in this case, like you rightly say, it's Harry trying, setting up this campaign, which essentially now is coming to fruition. But I think what this episode very clearly shows is it shows, I know there are people at some haters who said, no, Pia shouldn't have heard out Luke. No. But I think this episode shows why somebody like Pia, who excels at that stealth game, said, okay, this is the time I'm picking up on that cue. I'm understanding this guy's body language, what's best for my game, and then, putting those like subtle moves into action. It's not a flashy game. It's not a immunity win out. There's no grand fireworks when she makes her plays, but it is these subtle things which she's now saying, okay, well, I'm going to chat to Abby, at what point in time, I'm not just going to blindly follow the lines. I need to think about 1 or 2, 3 steps ahead. So I think this episode, if ever you doubted, if you watch the season, if ever you doubted, Pia's like strategy, this episode cements the kind of like the holistic view that she has of the game, which is why she won the season, definitely.
Yeah, I think that, when you look at how she plays the game, she was from the start very clever in aligning herself with Janine to be the bigger player, to be the one that's going to take the hits, to be able to manage your threat level in the game is so massively important, like we all know. And if you make too many big moves too early on, like Janine did in this season. She was clearly seen as the person that was running like, I felt like, obviously we know in the second episode she ends up getting voted out, but she probably ran 70% of the game from the front lines, but she did give a lot of credit throughout the whole season, and saying that, Pia is right there next to her making the moves with her, but yet no one saw that until she needed to go and make a case at the end for the moves that she made. So that's the perfect game. And I feel like an Australian Survivor season, you see a lot more of that subtle play and the things that people do behind the scenes that we can't always give the same credit or the same, when you look at an under the radar winner in the US shows, sometimes you don't see as much as you can see in these seasons. We see a lot of strategy in these episodes, and a lot of the strategy that's going back and forth here, with different groups talking, because you've got the two people. You've got, Dirty Harry.
Rightly explained, exactly. Yeah, there's the three pairs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Janine's trying very hard here to keep Simon with Dirty Harry. Later on in the episode, she talks about the fact that we need to keep Simon at this point, and let's turn against Abby. But in Dirty Harry's mind, he's like, why would I keep a third person there? Because Simon was only going to work really with Pia and with Janine. There's just absolutely no point in keeping three people here when you've got two groups of two people working together. That's such a big risk to his game.
No, exactly, and we'll get to that in the next episode. But I think Dirty Harry makes the right decision, and like I said, I think Simon's game, let's say fell flat. That's the wrong expression, but I think Simon lost a lot of momentum. I think two things happened. Okay, I think the one thing that happened is, he was big on the the Athletic 7 or the 7 Sports Stars, whatever you want to call them, and I think I got the opinion that he was started with Ross than maybe what we saw on the air. So I think Ross's Medivac cost him like his number one just before the merge, right? Which I don't think he had a lot. He had somebody else, which is really like I can tag my wagon to you and let's go to the end. And then I think the second thing is, we see this all the time, especially on these big casts of 24, or when you got two starting tribes of 10, you got this you understand the math, which I need a 7 or 8 person alliance, and always in that situation, if there's a alliance of 7 or 8, within that alliance there's one or two a core crew, which essentially are calling the shots, and they're like maybe the end of 5 or end of 4, and they've got like these auxiliary guys at the end. And I think to Simon's detriment, he wasn't that in the middle of that circle, So I think those two things counted against him, and then and to add to that, people at this point in time are starting to vote out physical threats, So it's just like tick box in terms of what can go wrong in this game, and that's why he's in this position. And like you rightfully say, Dirty Harry is smart enough to say, well, this guy adds no value to my game, so let's get rid of him.
Yeah, 100%. Now we move into the immunity challenge here, and with the immunity challenge, they have to walk back and forth, keeping tension on a rope, and they have to take basically blocks spelling the word, I think it was immunity, as they were walking back and forth. Yeah, and this is the famous one, the one that we saw Tony win his first, I think, individual immunity in any of his seasons and winners at war. So I'll always remember this challenge from that. And this is another one that looks like it's quite a bit of a, again, it comes down to the fact that, when you're down there, the adrenaline is flowing, you're going up against these people, your butt's on the line, and there's only like 7 people left. So immunity is worth a lot to every single person in the game at this stage. But you've got to stay calm and cool and collected here, because, when you see someone like Abby, she's leading most of the way through this, but Luke stays quite closely on her heels here, but he stays calm within the fact that he needs to chase the game, and he makes up some time. And Abby, ultimately is the person who loses her concentration here, and actually loses all of her blocks. I think she had the last one on there when she ended up losing it. So it's a challenge that goes slightly away from the more physical ones that we've seen up until this point. You're quite rightfully said, Australian Survivor, like when you look at that, the season as a whole, it is really a lot more about physical.
Those are tough. Yeah, I know for sure. It looks like a Marine boot camp, some of the challenges. No, go on.
I was going to say like Australian Ninja Warrior, or one of those obstacle course races that you would do. I feel like, I was thinking to myself, like, I would feel bad for someone that is a bit older, like the older lady you had in your season. I forgot her name now. That made it pretty deep into the game as well.
Letitia.
Letitia, yes, Letitia.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine Letitia having to do like some of these challenges when it's like the tribal challenges? Would have
I
been
will.
tough.
I will say this: Shane Gold did it
Yeah, it's true.
one season back. So I mean, if you have it in you, you can do it. No, but just back to the challenges. To this challenge, you're totally right. And these challenges are always difficult with the sense that you can take 10 hours and do it very slowly. And I'm gonna mathematically explain this. You can do it in 10 hours and give yourself 100% chance to make the challenge, right? Then you're not gonna get it right? Or you can say, well, I'm gonna do this and plan to do it in whatever at the 90% pace, but then you've got a 25% chance to make it. So how aggressive do you pace yourself? And do you look at who's the guy in front? Do you trust them to have the BMT moment to not collapse it? So, like I said, these challenges are more than just pure adrenaline. It's a little bit of where are you? Okay, let me pace myself. And like you rightfully said, that's what Luke did. Did. He stayed on her heels up until she made the mistake, and then just said, "Boom, okay, checkmate." I don't know. And then he won. What's it like? Fourth challenge in a row, third one in a row. I'm not even sure.
At this point, it was the second. It was the second at this point that
the
he
starting
won.
of his run. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. It was the start of the run that he did here. And we do find out that it was quite an important win, because when you see Janine and some of the rest of the people talking here, it sounded like for a minute there, Luke may have also been up for consideration, maybe more so in Janine and Pia's mind than the rest, because I do feel like Harry and Baden would have very easily just slotted back in with the plan with the rest of the guys who voted with them the previous night, and they wanted to make it a revolving door with Simon just going back out of the game, which is what we see in most of these cases, except for Chris Underwood, who ends up winning a bunch of things at the end to get to the end. Most of the time you vote the person out that comes back.
Exactly. Yeah. No, most of the times you do. And I think it's sad for Simon, but like you rightly said, this starts not to look too far ahead, but it starts Luke Toki's like immunity run, which essentially, 3 episodes down the line, which just shines this illuminating light on this guy, which is if he gets to the end, he wins. Because of this kind of like it's very flashy when you walk into tribal council and you've got a necklace on. People are like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. You don't walk into tribal council with like a badge or a halo of great social player or very strategic moves. But so in the jury's eyes, that definitely plays a part, and obviously the other guys pick it up. So this, like we said, this starts Luke's spree, and eventually gets him voted as well.
Yeah, so I mean, like we sort of touched on here, there's a bit of strategizing that happens here with Janine and Pia sort of saying, the only person that we really can target here is probably Abby, because Abby's never going to come back to us. And they try and talk to Baden, but more so Harry, I guess. Janine and Harry has had this interesting rivalry throughout the whole season, I would say. It's the godmother and the cockroach, like she calls him, because he doesn't die. It's been the whole time, it's been this whole the little ice cream man, the guy that's got the small, medium-sized business versus the big mogul, the enterprise lady that owns this big mogul company. And it's interesting seeing the love-hate relationship between these two sort of develop throughout the season. And this is the first time where Harry he says, I've got options for a change, and it's a good position to be in at this stage, because I can go with them or I shouldn't go with them. I think he makes the right decision here not to go with them here and to keep Simon in the game, because that's an extra number for Janine. And he burns the bridges with whoever he keeps. Like if it's Luke he's keeping, Luke's not going to be too happy about the fact that they got rid of Abby at this stage, because that's his second person at the moment in the game.
Exactly, yeah. And you rightfully said this. Janine, Boost Juice, I think it's a company called. Like I said,
good juices, by the way. If you ever go to Australia, go try it out. It's really good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take your word. I'll take your word on it. So obviously they've got this common interest, so to speak. Both business starters. But in the end, I think Luke, rather Harry, makes the right decision. In the sense of, Harry's not bad in the challenges, but you've got Abby, who's a bit of a she's a machine. You've got Luke Toki, who's a machine. Obviously, you've got Simon, who's a pro athlete, and then Baden, who everybody knows is a super fan. So if it's some kind of obscure puzzle or whatever, he can win it, and he actually does in the end. So there are a lot of like I said, at this point in time, the deck is stacked. So there's no more easy votes. So in this point in time, go for whoever is the biggest boulder in the road. And I think that's what they end up doing at this point in time, which is the right move. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it keeps the options open here for everyone, probably even more so for Luke and Abby, because they've worked with Janine and Pierre in the past. So, they're probably the ones, then we'll sort of see this play out going into the next episode, that will end up in that swing vote position where they could very easily go with Baden or Harry, or they could, sort of revert back to their family and go back with Janine and Pierre if they wanted to. So it leaves them in a very good position here. Still a good move for Harry, because definitely you don't want to leave a trio in the game at this stage. I don't think there's much else that happens really here. It's pretty cut and dry before they go into Tribal Council. And in Tribal Council, we do have JLP asking a lot of questions to the people that he would normally get the answers from, and people who've run the game in the past. But, Janine says, listen, I was out of the loop last time. I don't really know what's going on. You shouldn't be asking me the question here, which was quite funny because most of the game she's been in control. But for once, Janine and Pierre are sweating bullets.
Yeah, no, exactly. And to add to that, if you put yourself in Harry's shoes, I mean, they're down 2v5 with regards to the champions and contenders. So for him, it make massive sense to at least get a strong champion out of the game. And like you rightfully said, it's another feather in his cap to say, I've got not this guy. You want to, like they say, build your resume at some point in time, and not just say I went with the crowd. Which is part of a second vote, which we'll chat after this as well on the next episode. So I think, Harry is putting himself up to play a winning game at this point in time. I think there's no dispute about it, and it's almost like Janine and them. They're like, we can now do something weird, but then we cause so much, shit amongst our own people. So let's just do what everybody wants to do. Get rid of this guy who is a big challenge threat. And because I just want to mention this one thing. It's. I mean, look what we're doing now. I'm sitting here drinking a beer. You've got a kombucha. We've got comfy seats. There's nothing pressing us. When you're on the island and you've got this challenge and it plays out, let's say you wake up in the morning and you take a boat or whatever, you go to a challenge and it's a journey challenge. It lasts 2 or 3 hours. You're there until, let's say, noon. You don't have time, so you don't know. But more or less, let's say you get back at noon. The challenge ends. You come back. Now it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. You're back on your beach, and before the sun sets, you need to go back out to Tribal Council. So you don't have a ton of time to sit and strategize every single permutation and combination of what can happen with every single move. What if I get Pia and this person to vote with that person, or what if Luke and if he plays an idol? So that kind of theory crafting. I'm doing the inverse of what we're doing now, but that kind of theory crafting is great to do from the couch, and if you've got days and sometimes weeks to think about a season, you see the whole product. But at that point in time, you've got 4 hours to make a decision. And one thing I want to peek too far behind the curtain, but you must remember at the same point in time, production are pulling people out one at a time to go do their confessionals, so they can get that final clip. So you don't even have the whole day with everybody in position. People are getting rotated out. It's like I said, rotating door of people who need to go make confessions, and then at the end there's like an hour, and then they say, okay, boom, we go. So at that point in time, you don't have ample time or to go for every single combination, especially at this point in time. So if somebody like Janine or even Abby, the easiest thing to do is to say, guys, whatever. If we're all doing Simon and it's not me and we get rid of this guy, I'm okay with it. It guarantees you another day in the game. It's not as complicated to pull out. You're not in a position where you need to scramble, so you don't want to rock the boat too much. So a unanimous vote for everybody at this point in time, except for Simon Black, is a win. So what you're kind of saying with all of this that you've just gone through is that production may have costed Boston Rob the win in Winners at War with pulling him away from the tribe, when he was trying to keep everybody together when he had to go do his confessional. But I get what you're saying. It's really funny. I mean, that's a lot of people say, and I think a lot lot of people asked, when did they chat about this? And a lot of the players at that point in time, I remember, I think Russell Hans mentioned it at that point in time. Who you mentioned, Chris Underwood, who's the news anchor that he made fire to at the end?
Rick Devens.
Rick Devens mentioned it. There are a couple of people who said, guys, at some point in time, he needs to do a confessional. I mean, that's, and there's no, that's how the game works. That's how you, as the user, there's no narrator. JLP doesn't sit and he just gives, what happened previously on, but the story is told by the players. And at some point in time, we need to get that player's perspective, right? So, I mean, that happened, and that happens all the time. So, definitely.
No, I hear you, and it brings up a valid point, because I've never thought about it that much, and that becomes even a bigger issue when you're in a smaller tribe, like, funny enough, Boston Rob was in Winners at War at that time when that happened, or like you've got at this stage of the game with only 7 people there, it takes less people to flip or make a vote happen here. So it definitely plays a big part of it. And, we see a few times here in the confessionals them saying it's very far and few between we actually get time with people in camp to be able to talk where there's no one else around as well. So there's a lot of things to sort of take into factor. And then you've got these people aren't just chess pieces that you can move around, because everybody's got a thought and a mind of their own, and they all think they've got the game figured out. And in everybody's mind, they are the ones running the game, right? They're the ones that's got the blueprint to win it. And we're all our own heroes when we're out there playing the game, I would assume.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is, I'm just checking now, episode 20 was day 41. So this is now 41 days of living in Ireland. So, I mean, and I don't want to get into that. You can listen any exit interview and a person will tell you, the mental toll that it takes of sleeping on bamboo and not eating properly. So your mind is so convoluted that if there's an easy vote and it's not me, let's just do it, for your own sanity. And I think that's why you get this unanimous vote for you.
Yeah, so Simon, like you quite rightfully said, he's voted out unanimously. We saw it coming a mile off. I think it was a pretty predictable episode overall. We knew what was going to happen, but it does lead into the next episode, which, Pia has her birthday on day 43, and I was going to touch on the fact that, Australian Survivor is pretty hardcore, having 50-day seasons. And I'm sure you can appreciate that as someone that's played it on the 38 or 39-day version over in South Africa. I feel like, I'm sort of right in my recollection that Survivor South Africa in the early seasons only had like 29 days or something. It was quite short seasons before it went to longer days.
Yeah, they had shorter seasons. And then obviously, but that was at the time a different production company. I think Endemol Entertainment. Not sure who they're a subsidiary of. I think produced it. Not sure. Don't quote me on this verbatim. Then obviously Afrikaans take over with Leroux, Botha and Henry at the helm. And then I think they said, guys, we want to do this right. So give us a bigger budget. We'll make 39 episodes. I mean, obviously, if you make a longer show, you've got more episodes, so you've got more exposure to your sponsors and stuff like that. So I don't think it was a hard pitch to sell for them. I'm not too. I don't work in that industry, but no, you're quite right. I think season 6 was the first one that had 39 days. Before that, it was like 29 or something like that.
Yeah, and it didn't have any of the crazy twists that we had in the early seasons of Survivor South Africa as well, which is good to see. It's more of a traditional sort of season. That's why I don't sell, as a South African, I don't sell the earlier seasons of Survivor South Africa that much to my friends when I say, hey, watch it. I normally say, season 5 wasn't too bad, but season 6 and 7 is really where it's at when you want to see some good Survivor seasons. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, season 8 is going to be hopefully another good one. But we can sort of touch base on that towards the end if you've got any inside goss that you can deal.
No, maybe a bit about that. I just want to mention one thing. thing. I was voted out on the eve of day 34, day 35. I'm not sure. And so maybe I should have said spoiler alert.
Hey, listen, we've given a lot of spoilers this episode. I'll definitely put a disclaimer on it before people watch it, just to say there will be spoilers.
But I will say, like, the game, it starts the first week feels like fucking here with, like, you're new and there's always this stuff happening, but and then the game speeds up, and from what I played, it's sped up, in terms of what's happening. But from day 30 onwards, the game gets, like I said, at that point in time, we were like, 9, 7, 8 people left in the game. From like day 28 until day 35, the days felt like it felt extremely slow. And so it's like as you get to the end, it takes long. It feels like it takes longer and longer and longer. So at that point in time, and everybody's just getting gutful. I mean, I can't even imagine doing this. These were like 40 days. If we felt
50 days in total,
yeah. If we felt that like almost time dilation between day 28 to day 35, and maybe it's that thing like when you're on holiday, if you go on holiday for 3 months, the last 2 days are the longest. If you go for holiday for a week for your family, the last 2 days are the longest. So maybe it is that kind of rationalization where you in your mind gauge how long it's left. So maybe maybe that's just the way. But no, I will say to get towards the end, it gets quite long, and like I said, that's why any easy vote at this point in time is and at the same time, anything to celebrate, to just get your mind off the mundaneness of island life is something worth celebrating. So when Pia has her birthday, I'm like, let's have a party for like the whole day, because there's not much else what's going on.
Well, that's why you see like Pia, out there on the beach wrestling with Harry, and some of the shenanigans, and throughout the whole Australian Survivor, they do this quite a lot. Like even in All Stars in this season, they're playing cricket on the beach, they're doing all these kind of things. Don't know where they get the energy to do this, this late in the game, but still, it is probably just something to get your day going by quicker, because, in between challenges, obviously, you're just sitting in the beach, you're not doing that much, and the challenges and the tribal councils and things are kind of what you live for, because that's when the excitement is there and something is happening. So it, it keeps you awake, I guess, when you're depleted.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I just also want to mention, I think that's one of the, obviously that's not what this discussion's about, but there's a lot of like, discussions before of like the pros and cons of Australian Survivor and Africa and New Zealand and America. But I think one of the Australian one at times, it feels like a bit of a slog, because you have these 24 episodes, and they're all like more than an hour each, so it can get a bit mundane. But that being said, I think the Australian one, it shines this light on that like camp life, that the guys playing cricket, or people singing, or all these whatever, people telling jokes. I remember in All Stars there was the one where Matt was chatting to the guys about rugby and what's the difference between rugby and soccer, and he was giving the guys cuck because he's playing soccer. It's not the hardest rugby. Those kind of conversations, I mean, it happens. I mean, there's 24 hours of in a day, and people are talking about and doing all these things. And I think that's one thing where Australian Survivor has a bit of a leg up, is you get that insight. It's not just 100% strategy. Some of it is just the camp life and those like real human events, which happens on every season. To be frank. I just think on the Australian one, we hone in a bit on that, which I enjoy.
Yeah, I'm the same. I love the human moments. I love the fact that we get flashbacks of what people are doing in their actual lives, and things like that, which is something that is very unique to Australian Survivor as well. Now, with this sort of period of the game here, Pia sort of goes out with Abby and Luke into the ocean, and Janine says that, they've got a plan. Pia's going to try and work on them and bring them back. I did want to touch on the fact that, Luke is an interesting player, because he really is an all-around threat when it comes to the game. We see him out here in the water, and he's swimming really well. He's catching fish. He brings back quite a bit of fish by the looks of it as well, by going out to the ocean. A player like him, he's got a mixture of like a little bit of Tony Vlachos, with a spy shack that he likes building, a little bit of Aussie going out there being a provider, a little bit of whoever the challenge beasts are out there, Mike Holloway or Colby Donaldson, so back in the day, all this kind of stuff. He really is a triple threat. And then also a little bit of Jeremy, because, he's got the story of being, that his kid is going through a bit of a medical condition, cystic fibrosis, and he's got 2 sons as well that have got some medical issues as well, that I believe we hear a little bit more of that in the first season that he plays. And through all of this, he's still an extremely well put together human being, very positive, very likable guy. You cannot get a bigger target in the survival world than someone like a Luke Toki, right?
No, exactly. And to add to that, you forgot to mention that he can find idols, which is also a bit of an advantage of the game. And he has a strategic mind. Some people are great at finding idols, but they can't play it or can't utilize it. So he's one of those people who are constantly thinking a couple of episodes, but a couple of days ahead. So no, you are right. He's not even a triple threat. He's like a penta threat, or a hexa threat, or whatever, how you want to count. But yeah, and like you rightfully pointed out, Chris, he starts to run out of runway during this episode. I think it becomes clear to everybody that this guy, it was nice living with him, and it was nice being on this journey with him. But at some point in time, if this guy gets to the end, he wins. So they then start putting the pieces in place to say, guys, let's get rid of this guy when we have an opportune chance. Yeah.
100%. And we do get a little bit here of sort of Harry also telling about his journey and believing that he's had one of the hardest journeys to get to where he is currently in the game, because he was the last contender in that Contenders tribe with the champions that went over to that tribe. He somehow survived and he's still there. And we see him saying that, this is getting to the point end of the game, and now he's going to have to take out bigger threats than himself to win the game. He wants to sit next to someone that he thinks he can beat. And, there's a little bit of foreshadowing there, because he sits next to Baden when he says this, and we obviously know how that's going to play for him, trying to take Baden quite deep in the game. The one thing I did sort of notice with Dirty Harry this season, he is also someone that's got a very good strategic mind. He's someone that's a student of the game. He's someone that, he had the whole stick in his mouth, which is a shout out to Nick Wilson, so there we go, the Nick Wilson. Or before Nick Wilson, there was, Wendell, who did it before Nick Wilson as well. So that's why when he had it at first, I was like, well, Nick's not the first one to do it. So, but anyways, he loves Nick Wilson, so he gives him a shout out in the season. But, Harry is someone that I noticed that he's got a lot going for him, but he really struggles in challenges. Like, I didn't see him do that well in challenges this season, and it is something that will haunt him a little bit, I think, even coming back in All-Stars. But he's got a lot of, so he's not the Luke level of threat yet, but still a very dangerous player.
No, definitely. And I think it's one of those things where people have always debated this both in tribal council and in front of the TVs. And that is like the different levels, threat levels you have. And that's a lot of the times why you'll see this. I'm just going to take an extreme example. It's episode 2, and there's a single mom whose husband died or passed away, whatever, and she's like, guys, I'm a single mom, I've got 3 kids running on myself, and I work as a maitre d' at a restaurant, whatever, I'm just making stuff up. And people say, guys, if this girl gets to the end, she wins because of her story, right? So at that point in time, whatever her physical contribution to the game is, she's labeled as a threat because of the story that she has, that she brings to the table. And that's why I think it's something which, if we juxtapose this next to somebody like Janine, for instance, I think Janine is somebody who, once again, she played a good game, but at the same time, I think a lot of people were okay with taking Janine deep into the game because everybody had in the back of their head, like, well, if it's me, the ice cream guy, or you, the multi-millionaire, I must make the case to say I need in Australia, what's $500,000, if I'm not mistaken, 500,000 Australian dollars. Yeah, so you can make the case, say, I'm going to need it. So it's weird how multi-leveled Survivor is with regards to, who's a threat and at what point in time do you value things. And
each season that criteria changes upon, depending on the people that are out there, because certain people see different levels of threat as differently, that's the other thing. So that's why we get so many different players that win the game in so many different ways, because if you go in there thinking that automatically if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to get me there based off what you saw in the previous season, you're going to lose, right?
Exactly. And I think, once again, I don't want to get too much into the next season, but I think that's a big reason why we see what happens in All-Stars with a guy like Dave, with all this bizarre shenanigans. I mean, even in like that first act, where he and Matt are like, they're coming for me, no, they're not, and then they do this fake out the tribal, and oh no, Daisy, it's me, play out for me, and then Daisy gets voted out, that whole shenanigan, and a guy like that, going all the way to the end of winning, and you're like, how does somebody play this aggressive? So it's not even a stealth game. It's like a taunting
especially
game,
in a 50-day game.
Exactly.
Especially in a 50-day game.
Especially with a cost 24. It's like, here I am, come at me, bro. And I think to add to that, I think, and maybe this is my interpretation, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think because Survivor Australia has, up until now, valued the stealth game in such a high regard. There's always been this, guys, the Cookie Monster with Jericho and Shane Gold and now Pia. I think everybody... And maybe it's not a conversation, you see, but I think a lot of those guys sat there on the beach and said, guys, at what point in time are we going to let the big guys, get to the end and win the game? And that's what ended up happening. That's why you get your, like Matt going deep and obviously Dave winning, and you get the Lydia, who's a bit of a more aggressive in your face player. Those guys getting deep later on, like you rightfully said, because of how. So it's like almost like a bit of an ebb and a flow, as soon as the stealth game gets too much high regard, people vote out those kind of players for the next season. And like you rightfully mentioned out with season 40 in America, where Tony won, which I think in every single office pool or draft or whatever I saw, he was like the last pick because people said you can't win this game. But at the same time, people said it's just this like hiding in plain sight. It's not going to fly anymore. You need to be a bit more aggressive. And if I may predict, I think it'll change, to the other way again. So yeah, that's the beauty of this game. It's never static. It's always changing, and that's what makes it so great.
That's why the best players are the ones that can adapt. If you look at Tony's game as well, like he played two very different games and won two very different ways. Like, I mean, I'd say different in some ways because he waited a little bit longer to play a bit more of a sporadic game and to do some of the shenanigans that he did, pretty freely in his first time when he was out there and did quite early on in that season. But sort of moving back into this season of Australian Survivor, we do have here Harry and Baden seeing this as an opportunity with the ladies being out there with Luke. Janine is on the beach alone, and he says that, when you get someone alone on the beach at camp, that's quite rare. So they pull Janine in and they start pitching to Janine that they need to go after Luke. Luke is going to win the game. So in Harry's mind, he knows Janine is a really big threat. She's played a really good game until this point, but he doesn't look at Janine as a threat to win some of these probably immunities going down the stretch, but he does look at Luke as being that threat, plus he's got a good story at the end. So if we can get him, we've got to get him now. So great work here. And Janine is also, we see, on board with doing this, but she does say to do this, she's played with Luke for quite a long time. We are going to have to make it a blindside, and he can't see it coming.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, it doesn't pan out for them, but I think it's. I was when I watched that, I was skeptical with regards to. You've got this guy, like you rightfully said, who's the complete package, which has a high threat level, who's needs to win immunity to stay in the game. And if he doesn't win immunity, you want to blindside him. I mean, he's got to know. I mean, it's not his first rodeo, right? He's got to know it's coming. So I don't understand how. I mean, I understand what Janine is trying to do, right? And I understand her point. I'm not saying she was wrong with what she said. I'm just trying. I was sitting there and was trying to formulate, how do you blindside this guy who is a veteran of a game, who knows that I need to win out from here on until the end of the game, or I'm going home. I don't know the answer, like I said. So like I said, in principle, I do agree with her. I just don't know. Let's just speculate and say Luke loses. I don't know how you blindside him. I mean, he's just going to go, look for an idol or
I do feel like Luke at this stage. I do feel like Luke at this stage is feeling a bit comfortable with Baden. We've been seeing throughout the whole season, he's worked on that relationship with Baden early in the game, and he feels like Baden is really tight with him and won't go against him. He feels like Abby is very tight with him. I think he does know that Harry is a snake and probably shouldn't trust him, but I feel like he talks about his social game being really good this season, connecting and making friendships and things like that, which he has done. He's done all of those things, but I do feel like there was maybe, and I get what you're saying, this is his second time playing, he's a very savvy player, he probably would have seen something coming, but I do feel like if there was an opportunity for them to do something, it could have been right now. This is the last opportunity for them to take him out, and they kind of ran out of runway before this as well, because they had so many other big threats to get rid of, and that's another thing that I do really give Luke credit for this season, is that he got behind someone like David, because Luke is pretty big himself in stature and how he plays the game. He's out there, and he found someone that's even more out there than him to be in front of him, and that person took a bullet for him down the road, and Sean needed to take a bullet before him, Andy, no one trusted. They had to take him out, and then they had to get rid of some people in the contenders first. So he's got no right to be in the season as deep as he is at this stage. The fact that he got there, to me, similar to, not at the same level as Tony, but when he came back this season, as a big Luke fan myself, I was really nervous for him the first time I watched it. I thought, I just watched Russell Hance do that the season before. He got knocked out immediately. You're coming into that same spot. I know they're two very different players, and there's different reasons why Russell went early versus Luke, but I was nervous for him. So I feel like hats off to him for getting as far into this game as he has.
No, I agree. And look, one thing I want to say, a game like Survivor, 20 people enter, one survives. In Australian Survivor, it's 24, so only one guy wins. So do you say, well, the other 23 people played a bad game? No. So you can't say if you didn't win, you played bad. And I think with the hand that he was dealt and with the way he played, I think Luke, he excelled and I think he surpassed everybody's expectations with regards to where you would have pitched this returning guy coming. If you said he will make top 6 or 5th, whatever. I think that's pretty impressive. And, one challenge, one or two things maybe go differently and he wins the season. So, yeah, I think he played the best game that he could for sure. And I think, it's a remarkable feat. Absolutely.
Now, we do go into the immunity challenge here. Janine sort of mentions before we goes into the immunity challenge that, obviously immunity is going to be critical for her to stay in the game. She realizes that she's also on the chopping block if something goes wrong here. In the immunity challenge itself, it's the challenge where they're tethered to a rope and then they're sort of entangled on this frame that they've got to work their way through as they're going through the frame. They then have to use a bit of rope, throw it above a rope on top of there, and then sort of balance their way across like a rope kind of climb thing that they're walking on, and they have to throw sandbags against the target to then get puzzle pieces. And this is by far the most complicated puzzle that we've seen the whole season up until this point, because Australian Survivor don't normally like too many puzzles. What did you think of the puzzle at this stage? Would you give it an A grade or a B grade or a C grade in your mind? Because I know you're the puzzle king for Survivor South Africa. How would you sort of rate this?
I won't say I'm the puzzle king, but no, it is good. And you're right. I think back to our early conversation, Australia like these physical challenges and these physical things, and it's almost like the puzzles. They have to play second fiddle to these challenges. One thing I just want to say, which I don't know if necessarily if I like or don't like it, but it's one of those things where I mentioned earlier. If you do these challenges where you have to gauge beforehand how much rope do I need, do you spend time gathering the rope or just it's once again it adds that kind of like how long do you spend on this and how far you're willing, so those are the kind of things which always, and as you play you can like I said, because now you're spinning around trying to unspool some rope and you see the other guys going, but if you get it too early you waste time. If you spend all your time on getting the rope out, you never finish. So those things, and I'm not an expert. And one thing I don't want to give too much away, but when we were on our season, there was a lady who was in charge of, I won't give her name, in charge of the challenge design. And when we were flying back, we shot in Samoa, so we flew from Samoa to Fiji, and then from Fiji to South Africa. No, Fiji, Singapore. But I know a lot of the crew, cameramen, sound operators, editors, and this individual as well. They stayed over at Fiji, and then they shot. I think at that time All Stars. So they stayed over to shoot All Stars then. And they do that. They are like challenge designers, right? That's their job. They literally design the challenge on paper. So they go and they say, here's a challenge, here's what needs to happen, boom, boom, and people build it. And I think these kind of like catch-22 scenarios or trade-off, I don't think it's by I think it's definitely by design that they put those things in to make you doubt, to make you wonder, or get that kind of, I didn't have enough, or I forgot this piece back, and stuff. So, and it gives you those great TV moments, which sorry, we spent a lot of time chatting about the challenges. Now I can chat about these things all day, but no,
but it is interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's a multi. It's like we said at the top of the show. It's international community, and part of that community is the crew and the production. So yeah, I think this is a great challenge. I think it's a great design, and rarely that we see a puzzle at the end. It's always Australians like to, take something and pluck something as hard as you can until something breaks. Because a lot of cricket players to get them to actually be able to win some challenges.
So I've got a question just in case I forget to ask it a little bit later on, it's a little bit off topic for the episode, but just by sort of, because I've always known that the production crew behind the scenes that, there's a lot of Australians, there's a lot of South Africans that are actually on the US show even for Survivor. And one of the things with the crews being so, international behind the scenes and being entwined, if you were a betting man, how likely would you say it is that we would see some sort of an international global season at some stage with players from different countries playing together in a season? How likely would you say, if the production crews are already kind of in sync and there's certain people that cross over?
Yeah,
I would imagine there's some potential there for something like this to happen.
Yeah, I will. Before I answer the question, I'll give you a bit of an additional tidbit. I was when we were on our season. So I don't know if you were ever like in a what's the word? If you like. High school is probably the best example. The other places, if you're like in a fraternity or in some big organization, when you're high school and you see, let's say you're in high school in 2000, right? So, and in 2000, you're in matric, right? Okay. But then you see somebody who comes in, like, he's like, there's a big match, whatever, and he's like 23 or 24, and he comes back and he's got his like 1996 jacket on. You're like, whoa, that guy was in the school 1996. He's old school. He knows what it's about. Those kind of like hierarchy things, right?
Yeah.
We had a camera person, our camera crew. So a lot of a camera crew were like were like hats that would say like Ghost Island or Redemption Island, or they had like crew buffs from like Heroes or whatever. Old seasons, and then this one guy had a jacket. Coincidentally, it was like this, not like this denim jacket I'm wearing, but it's like this brown jacket that he wore. And at the back it said Heroes versus Villains crew, right? So this guy has been shooting Survivor since at least
season 20.
At least season 20, right? Maybe earlier. I don't know. You don't make small talk with crew, but that's a kind of like caliber of these guys. I mean, and he was in the South African season, and I'm pretty sure. Can't say it for a fact, but I'm pretty sure he shot the Australian one as well, from something I deduced that someone said. So yeah, these guys have been around the block, and I think it's no secret that a lot of the guys, and I've heard also that within the American season there's like a big picking order with you don't just come in as a cameraman, you have to come in like as an AR or assistant cameraman or whatever, and you have to work yourself up, and they give preference to guys who've been with the show longer, stuff like that, which is quite cool. But in terms of making the show, I'm not sure if you've listened to the interview on, I think Shannon Gates did with Leroux Botha on the production side of Survivor South Africa and how they got the rights and stuff like that. I think it's one of the RHAP podcasts. And Leroux there speaks about the franchise and how you get the rights and who owns it, whatever. And like I say, it's not my area of expertise. I would think it's pretty fucking cool if they go for like an international version. I would definitely be promoting the show, saying, guys, we need to do this, or campaign if it comes down to campaigning.
I would be hoping you're in it. Like if it does come, like I really hope you wouldn't want to go out there again and sort of try your luck again.
I'm one of the people who always said I won't go back easily. It has to be something really spectacular to make me go back to Survivor. Like I wouldn't do what Luke does, just like some kind of a one returning season. I'm just the one guy who return. I wouldn't do that, but an international season, I think that's quite a big register. And that's obviously then you play with people you've watched, growing up your whole life. But no, I know there are a lot of like technical stuff or legal stuff with regards to who owns the franchise. So yeah, I know we're off topic now, but I don't think it's as easy as we would like it to happen. I don't know who distributes it, and I know there's copyrights with. If you want to watch the show and you're in the district, it says you can't watch this video because you're not from that country. So anyway, I know I don't know enough about it, but I know it's complicated. It's not a simple answer. But if I could choose, I would say let's do it. It's cool.
Listen, there's a big chance that if that type of season ever comes up, like I don't think it would be Survivor South Africa, because I don't think that Survivor South Africa could afford the winning fees. Like for instance, R1 million isn't the same as 500,000 Australian dollars, or it's not the same as $1 million US. So I mean, if that kind of money is up for grabs, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of South African survivors who would more than love to go play. Not that you do it for the money only, but it definitely helps. It's not going to hurt.
I mean, it's a big pull. Like the flag of Switzerland, that would be a big plus for sure.
100%. Now, in this specific challenge, to go back to this, and thanks for indulging me as a bit of a super fan here. I just wanted to ask the question.
No
now,
problem.
going back to the immunity challenge, we do see that it's pretty much neck and neck between Luke and Abby throughout this challenge, and it does seem like they're the only two in the challenge for the bigger part of the I guess the whole challenge. Towards the end, you see finally Baden catching up, so there's maybe like a little bit of hope that someone like a Baden could pull one of those famous come from behind puzzle wins out. But Luke is no dummy himself. He's probably not at Baden's level when it comes to puzzles, but he had enough of a lead to finish this off, and he does win his third immunity here, and it's a second in a row that he wins, making him safe, which basically destroys the plans that were set in motion by Harry and Janine earlier in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Like we spoke about the challenge. Obviously, a guy like Baden, you would maybe tip him as the guy who could pull off the puzzle, but it has a physical component. And then after this, it's one of those, a lot of Survivor episodes, you get in a bit of a, he said, she said, and I shouldn't tell you, but I know that this episode is especially like filled with a lot of like, it sounds like a high school, a high school prom or high school dance, and two guys like two girls, but there's one girl who's not so pretty, and then there's one guy who's socially awkward. Now everybody needs to figure out who they're going to dance with, and it just takes forever to get that set that into motion. So no, there's a lot of talking this episode. I must be honest. At points I was like, I understand, but it's difficult to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening throughout the whole 15,000 dialogues we see in episode 21.
And I think what it really comes down to is the fact that they've got an hour to full, or I guess like more than an hour if you put the ads in there as well, but an hour of actual run time to sort of full. And there's not that many players left in the game. So now you're seeing the actual plans, you're seeing the fake plans, which I'm sure you were a part of in your own season where you would pretend to be in a certain plan with someone. You're seeing all of it. So it makes it really hard to know, listen, which way are we actually going to go in this episode? Which one's the real plan? But ultimately, I guess the conversations here that become quite interesting is the fact that, you've got Abby and Luke working still very closely here with Baden and with Harry, but they're also having that conversation later on with Janine and Pia about the family and trying to see if they should bring the family back together. And I think that's probably the more interesting thing to sort of talk about here is the fact that, did Janine and Pia, they didn't really have much of a choice here. I don't think that Baden and Harry would have worked with them, and Janine probably quite rightfully knew that, with Luke off the table, she's the biggest threat in Harry's mind, so he's going to come for her. So they could only go one place. Did Luke and Abby, did they make the right choice by cutting the family here and going with Baden and Harry? That's the big question. Or would Luke have been better to stay with the champions at this stage? That's an interesting one for me. I don't know if I've got the answers necessarily for this. I feel like Luke is in a very bad position, and he now knows it because Abby has filled him in that Baden and Harry has been coming for him the whole day as well. So he only finds out about this plan now, and he's like, that Baden is a real slimery bastard or something like that is what he says, because he was trying to get me today. It's a really tough decision for him here because he's kind of like two bad choices, but I don't know. I'm almost feeling like going here with Janine and Pia may have been obviously we know how it plays out now, and it's one of the things that definitely I'll ask him if I do talk to him later on today. Did that come back to haunt him because you cannot trust Harry? And maybe he could have trusted Janine and Pia that little bit more to get him further in the game. But ultimately he gets fourth in either scenario, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to say. I think whichever way you slice this, that's exactly what I want to say. Whichever way you slice this, I think the end result is the same, which is whenever Luke loses, he's out. But if you put yourself in Pia and not Pia and Janine, sorry, Luke and Abby's shoes, they've either, like you rightfully said, they can do this like we're going to be champion strong and we're going to vote out Baden, or we can, at some point in time, cannibalize one of our own, okay, which is in this case Janine. And I think at that point in time, if I was anybody else, I think Baden played a game very similar to in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers with Ryan, who eventually came third. The same kind of guy where in the pre-merge, his street credit was like here. And then as the merge progresses, it's almost like it's slowly starting to decay, and other people are gaining street credit. And I think at that point in time, I think a lot of people, for them, the decision is easy. It's, guys, because at that point in time, you have to start thinking, if I sit at the end, who can I win in challenges, and who can I win if I sit next to them? And I think Janine is maybe just somebody I would venture. Like I said, I don't know Janine personally, but I think it's maybe you can make the case that, listen, this person has money, I don't, so give it to me. But I think Baden is an obvious case of, like I said, I don't think Baden's a bad player. It's just the way I think he's being perceived at this point in time is, we can beat this guy at the end. So let's not get rid of him now. Let's take out a big threat. And if I was Harry, I would have said, let's take out somebody like Abby, who's a real challenge threat. Like rightfully said, Janine hasn't really posed herself as either this mastermind in challenges or this beast in the physical side of a game. So I would have set my gauge on somebody like Abby, if it was me. But yeah, I think at the end, Luke and Abby decide. Well, if we at some point in time we have to vote out one of our own, and if we have the preemptive strike. If we have that first mover advantage, that's to our benefit. So they say, well, if it's a chess game, we be white and we make the first move, and they get rid of Janine.
Yeah. So random fact on Ryan Aldridge, I actually podcast with his cousin on the challenge recaps that we do on Reality Pop as well. So I just found out that he's the cousin of Ryan Aldridge quite recently.
Okay.
It's just funny you mentioned him just now.
Sure, yeah.
I do think that Luke probably is in a position where he wins against anyone in the final at this stage. So you could also argue, because Luke spoke to them there and he said, people are going to take Baden to the end as a GOAT. Maybe the move, and again, this is very hindsight. We're sitting here on our comfy couches having our kombuchas and our beers, but maybe the move is to take a Baden out at this stage for him, just to eliminate that option for people to drag Baden even further into the game. But again, Baden is someone that he's worked with this whole game, and I think that he trusts Baden more than someone like a Harry, really. So really, really tough moves here. The big thing here that it comes down to, this is the final act for the little ice cream scooper man from Perth taking on the godmother, the big CEO tycoon, and this is going to play out in tribal with those two going up against each other. And quite an explosive tribal here. Probably the biggest thing was Harry sort of bringing out the comments in regards to, it seems like there's been a trend at this stage where the champions have picked off one of us, but they've always made sure that we're still in the minority. So we don't really fully have the power to be able to, enforce the decision-making on what needs to happen. And if that trend continues to be followed, it might be that we get saved this time, but we will still be taken out next time. So I feel like the champions have played a pretty good game, and it sort of brings it up into mind. It's something we see quite often these days in Survivor, having that majority alliance, happy to work with the minority to pick certain. It's kind of the voting block strategy that Stephen Fishback spoke about a few seasons ago. It's still very prominent here in this season, I guess in all current seasons. We don't really have a name for this type of strategy, but it's something that happens often.
Yeah, no, we don't have a name for it, but no, you're bang on. It's that thing of like, we've got a 9-8, and then we'll vote two of you out. Now it's a 9-7 or 9-6. Help us to get rid of two guys, and then the minority always jumps on that, because they always pounce on that opportunity because, hey, it's not me. And then there's a core group who says, well, now it's at 7-6, so it's time for two of you to go. And I think if you're in a minority, like I said, this is now hindsight. I mean, the better move is to say, guys, we've got one idol between the six of us. Screw you. We're not working with you. Roll the dice. You've got a 16.6% chance of who it's going to be, but at least you have something. But because otherwise, if you play the other way around, you keep going in jumping ship and helping those guys. I mean, not to get too much into our season, but I mean, that's what happened our season. It was the big minority, and it kept getting rid of the smaller crew. And up until a point in time where the people who were in the majority were like, oh no, now it's me, and then they got voted out. We saw the same thing happen in All Stars with Dave and them, where they would just, at that point in time, it was Harry and his crew again. Keep voting them out one at a time, and then just cannibalize their own at the crucial time, blindside, whoever it was, just to make sure they have that number advantage. So yeah, it can at point, especially at the end game, here between 8 and 4, get pretty predictable. I don't know how you break that as a viewer. I think you don't break it as a production with the mechanics. I think you cast people who won't fall for that shit. That's what I think. People who say, well, if I get voted out, so be it. But at least I'm going to make my final stand and not get not be a sucker in somebody else's game. That's my opinion. But yeah, it's a very valid strategy, and it's one which they do again and again. And we saw it here in episode 21 as well.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a valid point where you said, you take the idol, you use it within a team, and you try and get yourself further in the game. And, hate him or love him for it. I know he's a polarizing character. That's exactly what Russell Hantz did in Samoa when he was 4 players going up against the majority back then, I think, which was like 7 or 9 or something like that. And he ended up taking that 4 to the final 5 because he played idols strategically and correctly. And none of them wanted to bend, and they were all very tight. They didn't break from that. And it is a tough one. Like, if you're in that scenario, do you go to the person that's at the bottom that the majority alliance is trying to get rid of? But then there's a risk that those people normally are also some of the most not so savvy players. They kind of think that they're still in, and they kind of, how will my tribe's not coming for me? You guys are trying to trick me, and they might go back to the majority, and then you're again up shit's creek without a paddle. So it's a catch-22 situation in regards to how you handle that.
It is a catch-22, and more often than not, if you've been there, and even if you watch the show, you'll see people always jump off the opportunity of saying, if I guarantee that I'm here tomorrow, I'll take it because anything can happen. And that's always people's mindset. They're like, well, it's not me, and I'm guaranteed to see tomorrow, so why won't you do it? Even if, and maybe it's a personality thing, maybe it's but I mean, I was one of those people who always said, I would rather lose the game than sit at the end and get 0 votes. Okay, that's always the attitude I mean, that's my personality. That's how I approach the game, and I'm not saying everybody should do that. I mean, it fucking didn't work for me, so who am I? But a lot of people are saying, well, they've got that. If it's not me, and they're like, yeah, tomorrow's a new day. Maybe the chips can fall differently. It can, but the odds are that it will fall differently is low. And like I said, it depends on your personality. If you want to take that gamble, or if you want to, make your stand at 10 and get voted out, or say, well, if I do this now and it works, I go all the way to end. That's a choice every man has to make for himself. Yeah.
So one funny thing here that I also wanted to touch on the tribe is that sort of stood out to me is like, it maybe won't be funny for you. It might be traumatizing as it starts bucketing down with rain while they're sitting there in tribal council. Does that give you flashbacks of when you were out there in Survivor and getting rained on all the time? I know Rob, when he was on the podcast, he said that, he definitely doesn't want to be wet again, after the season you guys had.
Exactly. We had a rough season. I was watching this with Hailey, these couple of episodes. Hailey's my wife, and we were watching it. And at some point in time, she stopped and she's like, "Jacques, do you realize that what we're watching now? You're on that show. Is that cool for you watching what we're seeing now?" And that was episode with Daisy sitting there in the rain. And I said, "You know what? There's nothing. When I sit and watch this, I don't think, wow, it's cool. I said, I watched this Daisy girl in that shelter, and she's alone. And we saw a 20-second clip of her getting rained on. But I know that it rained for 48 hours on her, and she sat there, and she got nowhere to go, and she's got no dry clothes." And I said, so for me, there's nothing romantic about it. It's just the sheer, oh no, that because I mean, if you're at a point where it's so cold that you have to wear your socks, but your socks are wet, so what do you do? If you're at that point in time where you can't hang up your clothes, everything is sticking to you and everything's wet, it's like I say, you see a like you say now, we see this clip of it pouring down on them, but it's a 30-second clip of something that takes 24 hours. And when people say at any point in time it rains, I always tell Hailey, I said, you know what, I'm glad I'm not in Samoa right now. And if you ever want to sit there and say, yeah, it's not so bad, whenever it rains in your house, turn on the sprinklers, go stand in the rain as long as you can. Just as long until you say, I don't want to do this anymore. And then you check how much time elapsed. And if you do that for a week, then you can go and survive it. But otherwise, no, you've got no reason to complain or think these guys are exaggerating. It's
you were a super fan. You were a super fan going into this season, but would you say you were still unprepared?
Look, no,
For the conditions. Like,
no. I hear your question, because look, not to get too deep about it on the psychology, but I played sport my whole life, right? I mean, I'm not a big guy. I mean, you guys saw me walking around in my underpants and on an island. I was never a big guy, so I always had to rely on mentally outsmarting my opponent, or dummying when he's not expecting me to dummy or whatever. And I very at a very young age, I got very, for lack of a better word, mentally strong with regards to sports. Because I never played against a guy who was smaller than me. I always played against bigger guys. So I knew if I lose the game mentally, I'm done. That's all I have is essentially my wit and to think on my feet. So what I always told myself, in that when it's pissing with rain and it's cold and and I sit there and I think, you know what?
You're still here? We might have lost Jacques there for a second, but it's been great having him on for this episode, especially just as someone that has played the game before. I think he's brought some really unique perspectives into the season and the show. And Jacques is someone that we will be looking at bringing back onto the show as well to do a more of a deep dive into his season, because I think that there's some really valuable insights that we can go into for his season. And it was a good season as well. So I hope that if you're watching this still an hour and 25 minutes in, that you will be joining us on that journey when we finish this season and when we're moving into watching the other seasons as well. Now, overall, in the end, for this episode, we do end up with Janine going home. Obviously, Janine ends up getting 4 votes against her. Biden's got 2 votes against him, and ultimately it's not going to work out for Janine in this episode. You do see that David is very excited on the jury, and there's a few other people on the jury here that's very excited about the outcome of this as well. Overall, 2 great episodes. It's been great having Jacques on here. I don't know if he's going to come back on, because I do know, being from South Africa myself, sometimes you get power outages and things like that in the country. I'm hoping that it's not something like that, and that's maybe why he got disconnected there. But, overall, 2 good episodes. We will be doing more content. There's a few more episodes coming up. We've got Luke Toki, who is confirmed to do a season retrospective with us. Like, we'll be looking at the whole season for the Champions versus Contenders, and that should come out after we've done all of the regular episodes. We will have on Tuesday if you're in the States, or on Wednesday if you're in Australia, New Zealand, we'll have Riley back with me, and we'll be talking about the next 2 episodes here for it as well. I think Jacques is on his way back, as I can see here. Hey, Jacques.
Chris, sorry, man.
You back?
I didn't put a plug in my laptop. I thought I did, but I didn't. I apologize.
That's no problem. I just kept talking. Yeah. I'm used to talking, so there's no problems. And I was just giving them just a little bit. I told them, it's South Africa. I'm from there. I know what it's like. It could be a power outage. We just don't know what's happened there. But I've talked through the whole thing of us having had Janine voted out on a 4-2 vote. And I also sort of teased to the guys, I said that, Jacques, it's been great having you on here today. You've given us really valuable insights as someone that has actually played the game before. And I said that, I'm very interested in sort of doing a bit more of a deep dive with you in regards to your experience of being on the show and talking to you about the actual season that you played on as well. And hopefully we will get you back on that as well moving forward. And I teased them on some of the other things that we've got coming up here as well, with Luke Toki coming on. And there's a bunch of your castmates that have been very responsive and that will come up here and have a conversation as well. So I'm really looking forward to that moving forward. Is there any final thoughts that you sort of had on the 2 episodes and on the show, I guess, as a whole? Anything that you want to plug as well? Like, I know you used to do a bit of podcasting back in the day. I don't know if you're still into that at all.
So I don't even know what was I saying before I got cut off. It felt like I was in the middle of a passionate story, and then
you were talking about the sports psychology and coming into the show. You had that edge that you brought into the show.
It's not a sport. You asked about the rain. No, I think
yes.
So. The quick answer was just that for what I always thought of: if it's raining on me, it's raining on the guy next to me as well. And if I'm 1% more mentally strong than he, then I'm in a better place in the game. So. Although it's like I say, I mean, nobody prepares for rain unless you're like, I don't know who works in rain. Nobody had it.
Hey, 'cause some construction, like, listen, I did some construction work in England. The first country I lived in when I moved out of South Africa was in the UK.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I do have a feeling for like being outside in the rain, working,
Okay.
getting your socks wet in your shoes, and like at least I didn't have to go sleep in the rain. But I guess you know you're a little bit more used to being out in the wet, you know, compared to having a nice cozy office with a heat pump or something, you know.
Yeah. So the long answer short, nobody's prepared for that rain, and for me it was just, if I'm just mentally strong enough to guy next to me, then I'm fine. So I always just took comfort in that, and that was what I just used to motivate, because other people broke down and cried and whatnot. So I'm just like, well, if they're crying and I'm not, then I'm winning. So that's just the way I approached it. But Chris, to ask you a question, plugging something, no. You said about podcasting? No, I did, way back when, but that was just about Survivor Season 6. I'm currently doing something on Instagram with Dante from our cast as well. We chat once a week, but it's more of a me and Dante catching up, and then people can just join us and ask random questions. Then it is, a very serious podcast. It's like, I would say it's C-tier production quality, but A-tier content, if I could describe it that way.
By the way, Dante, one of my favorite like castaways from your season. Absolutely love them. Like, just love you. I understand him being from South Africa. You know, I understand exactly how frustrated he got, and he's just a very straightforward person. You know, I love the like explosive, but loved it.
Explosive, but what you see is what you get. And I think one thing about Dante, which is, I don't think the screen. I just want to say this. So just while on the topic, I think one thing that Australian Survivor does really well is, I don't know what you call it, those like 20 or like 1 minute clips of every person with like whatever their life is back at home, where they're like, here I'm working at a construction site, or here I'm at a school, or whatever. That kind of insight which you get into the characters, I think adds a lot of value, which we don't get from the even South African or American one. American, it's all about the strategy or whatever, but I mean, that can just be anybody playing the game, where I think on the Australian side, you get a bit of that insight. But yeah, Dante's a cool guy. He's smarter than he looks. He's traveled the world. He's lived in a ton of countries. So he's quite well traveled and well read. And you won't guess it if you just watch him survive the first time playing.
I can fully appreciate that.
I have a suspicion if they do a returning season, I think he's pretty high up on the roster with regards to who you want to invite back. That's just my take.
I'm definitely there for it, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit more just as we end this podcast here.
Sure,
so please stay online. Guys, if you've watched it, thank you very much. You know, if you like this kind of content, we're working really hard to bring more and more global survivors onto the show, because I know that there's a lot of content there for international survivors going on these podcasts, but I do think that there is still a market for people like Jacques, who've played the season before and, you know, have got a lot of knowledge of the game, to come on here and have some conversations with us, the super fans of the show. Please, guys, hit the subscribe button if you like this, hit the notification bell if you want to see more of this moving forward, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks, Jacques. It's been great.
Thanks, guys.